You know, it's really amazing to see how medical testing is becoming more and more common outside of the traditional clinic setting, right? Like it's happening in our everyday lives now.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see it everywhere, from those at-home strep tests that give you quick results to continuous glucose monitoring.
hmm
It feels like the whole world of diagnostics is changing right in front of us.
It really is.
And that's actually what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah.
The global market for something called point-of-care coagulation testing.
Exactly. And when we talk about point of care coagulation testing, or POCT for short, what we really mean is
SOT.
any kind of blood clotting test that can be done right then and there, wherever it's needed,
Right on the spot.
instead of sending a sample off to a central lab and waiting for results.
Like taking the lab to the patient.
Precisely. It's all about bringing that diagnostic ability directly to the patient.
And for this deep dive, we're fortunate to have a super detailed analysis from a report called the Global Point-of-Care Coagulation Testing Market Report 2025.
A great report.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to understand the size of this market right now, where it's projected to go over the next decade, who the key players are. But most importantly, what does all this mean for you, the listener? What are the forces shaping this market?
Exactly. What are the driving factors behind these shifts?
Exactly. So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
First things first, what's the lay of the land? What's the scope of this market, and how much growth are we looking at?
Well, according to the report, the global market for point-of-care coagulation testing is estimated to be a pretty significant USD 1947 million in 2025.
Okay, so we're already talking about a substantial market.
But that's nothing compared to where it's projected to go by 2033.
Oh, really?
This market is expected to hit a remarkable USD 346.673955 million.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It is.
So to help us grasp the scale of that growth, can you tell us what the average annual growth rate is looking like?
Sure. So we're looking at a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 7.40% from 2025 to 2033.
7.40% every year for almost a decade.
Yeah. And it's important to note that these projections aren't just pulled out of thin air.
Right.
They're based on a solid foundation. Using 2024 as the base year, they factor in historical data going all the way back to 2021.
So it's really grounded in those recent trends.
Exactly. It's not just speculation.
Okay, so we've got a solid growth rate overall.
Yeah.
But I think we both know that a global market is rarely uniform, right?
Well, absolutely not.
Are we seeing this growth evenly distributed across the world? Or are there some regions that are really taking the lead?
You're absolutely right. It's definitely not uniform. And the report breaks down these regional variations in a really fascinating way.
Oh, perfect. I love a good breakdown.
So as it stands, North America is holding the biggest slice of the pie.
Okay.
They account for over 40% of the global market, with a value of USD 720.39 million in 2025.
Wow, they're really ahead of the game.
They are, but their projected CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is a bit more moderate at 5.9%.
That makes sense, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, why do you say that?
Well, North America often seems to be the first to embrace new medical technology, so maybe they've already had a head start.
That's a good point. Early adoption definitely plays a role.
Okay, so we know North America as a whole is leading, but what about within North America? Are there any countries that stand out?
Absolutely. So within North America, the United States is the real powerhouse.
Okay.
Their market size in 2025 is USD 568.39 million, with a projected AGR of 5.7%.
So still strong growth, just a bit slower than the overall North American rate.
Exactly. Then we have Canada following behind with a market of USD 86.45 million and a slightly higher growth rate of 6.7%.
Okay, so still keeping pace.
And then there's Mexico with a market size of USD 65.56 million and a AGR of 6.4%.
So everyone in North America is seeing solid growth, but it sounds like even though they're leading now, they're not the region with the most explosive growth.
That's right.
So where are we seeing things really take off?
The Asia-Pacific region, or APAC, is where the real action is.
APAC, interesting.
Now, in 2025, APAC accounts for about 23% of the global market, so a bit behind North America, with a size of USD 467.28 million.
Okay, a decent chunk, but still behind.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. Their projected KGR from 2025 to 2033 is a whopping 10.1%.
Whoa, 10.1%.
That's significantly higher than both North America and Europe.
That's a huge difference. That suggests some serious momentum building in that part of the world.
Absolutely. It's a region to watch, for sure.
So within APAC, which countries are the real drivers behind this impressive growth?
Well, China is definitely a major player with a 2025 market size of USD 196.26 million and a CAGR CAGR of 9.6%.
So a big market with solid growth.
But the real star of the show in terms of growth rate is India.
India, really?
Yep. Their projected CAGR is a staggering 12.0% with a 2025 market size of USD 46.73 million.
Wow, 12%. That's incredible. What's fueling that kind of growth?
It's likely a combination of factors,
Like what?
increasing access to healthcare in areas that were previously underserved, a burgeoning middle class that can now afford these diagnostic tools. It's a real opportunity for companies in this space.
It's almost like the perfect storm for market growth.
Yeah, you could say that. And it's not just China and India that are contributing to APAC's success.
Oh, right.
Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, and Taiwan are all showing strong growth too.
Okay. So a really dynamic region overall.
Definitely. And their CAGRs range from 8.6% to 10.4%. So all very healthy.
Wow, that's impressive. So it seems like APAC as a whole is a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about Southeast Asia as a whole, which is another big contributor with a CAGR of 10.9%.
Okay, so lots of individual countries and subregions within APAC are really driving this growth.
It's a really exciting region to be watching in this market.
It sounds like it. So we've talked about North America, the current leader, and APAC, the rising star. But what about Europe? Where do they fit into all of this?
Europe is holding strong. They've got over 30% of the global market share in 2025, with a total size of USD 564.63 million, and their projected CAGR is 6.4% from 2025 to 2033.
Okay, so they're not growing as fast as APAC, but they're still a major player.
Absolutely. Some of the key players in Europe include the UK with a market size of USD 94.86 million and a CAGR of 7.2%.
Okay, so the UK is doing pretty well.
Then there's Germany at USD 111.80 million and a CAGR of 6.6%.
So both the UK and Germany are exceeding the European average.
Exactly. And you also have France, Italy, Russia, and Spain, all with substantial market sizes, but generally with slightly more moderate growth rates compared to the UK and Germany.
All right, so Europe is holding its own with some countries even exceeding expectations.
That's right.
Now, we can't leave out the rest of the world, can we? What's happening in South America, the Middle East, and Africa?
Of course not.
Right.
So South America has a 2025 market share of over 5%, which translates to USD 73.99 million, and they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 8.1%.
Okay, so a smaller market share, but still some really good growth.
Yep. And Brazil and Argentina are the powerhouses there, with CAGRs of 8.7% and 9.0% respectively.
So they're leading the charge in South America.
That's right now. Moving on to the Middle East, they represent about 2% of the global market in 2025, with a size of USD 77.88 million. But don't let that fool you. They have a very strong projected CAGR of 8.7%.
Okay, so they might be small, but they're mighty.
Exactly. And Saudi Arabia and the UAE are the key players in that region.
And last but not least, what about Africa?
Africa currently holds about 1% of the global market, with a size of USD 42.83 million in 2025 and a respectable CAGR of 7.7%.
So the smallest market share, but still growing at a decent rate.
Exactly. And South Africa is the largest market on the continent for this technology.
Okay, so to recap the regional landscape, North America is the big dog right now, but APAC, particularly India, is where the most rapid growth is happening. So Europe is a strong second in terms of market share, and South America and the Middle East are showing some really promising growth rates.
And Africa, though smaller now, still has the potential for significant growth.
Absolutely. Now let's zoom in a bit, shall we?
Sounds good.
We've talked about the overall market, but point-of-care coagulation testing isn't just one single thing, right? There are different types of tests, devices, and ways they're being used.
Oh, definitely. It's a diverse market, and the report does a good job of breaking it down into different segments.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk segmentation.
Yeah.
How is this market divided up?
So there are several ways to look at it. One way is by product outlook.
Okay, meaning what kind of products are we talking about?
Exactly. So we have two main categories: consumables and accessories, and then instruments analyzers.
Okay, so the stuff you need to run the tests versus the actual devices themselves.
You got it. And right now, consumables and accessories are likely the bigger part of the market.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, think about it. Consumables are things like the test strips that actually go into the device, the chemical reagents that make the test work, and the solutions that are used for quality control to make sure the device is functioning properly.
So it's all the stuff that's used up every time you run a test.
Exactly. It's the ongoing stuff that keeps those instruments running.
And I'm guessing that's why it's such a big part of the market.
Right. There's this constant demand for testing in hospitals, doctors' offices, and now increasingly in homes. And with the growing number of people with blood disorders, the need for those consumables just keeps going up.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like the ink for your printer. You always need more.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
Okay, so consumables are huge, But what about the instruments themselves?
Oh, this is where things get really interesting. The instruments analyzers segment is actually the fastest growing.
Really?
Yeah,
Even though it's not the biggest part of the market right now.
that's right. And there are a couple of reasons for this.
What, like what?
First, there's this increasing demand for quick on-site diagnostics, particularly in places like emergency rooms and outpatient clinics.
Makes sense. Time is of the essence in those settings.
Exactly. And second, we're seeing some really cool advancements in the technology, making these devices more portable, user-friendly, and accurate.
So it's becoming more feasible to do these tests right then and there.
Exactly. And this really aligns with the broader shift we're seeing in healthcare towards bringing testing closer to the patient
Absolutely. It's all about convenience and speed.
and better patient care.
Now we've talked about the different products, but what about the different ways these coagulation tests are actually done? Are there different methods being used?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The market is also segmented by testing method, and one method stands out as the most common right now.
Which one is that?
It's called PT-INR.
PT-INR. Okay, I've heard of that, but remind me what it stands for again?
So PT stands for prothrombin time, which is basically a measure of how long it takes for your blood to clot.
Okay, so how quickly your blood can form a clot.
Exactly. And INR stands for International Normalized Ratio, which is basically a way to standardize those results. So no matter where you get the test done, the results are comparable.
So it's like a universal language for blood clotting time.
Exactly. Now, PT-INR is super common because it's the go-to test for monitoring people who are on anticoagulant therapy.
Anticoagulant therapy, that's like blood thinners, right?
Exactly. So people with conditions like atrial fibrillation or deep vein thrombosis often take these medications to prevent dangerous blood clots.
Right, and the PT-INR test helps make sure they're getting the right dose.
That's exactly it. And the increasing use of these medications, along with the rising number of people with cardiovascular disease, is a big reason why PT-INR is so prevalent.
Plus, we talked about the shift towards home healthcare earlier, and I'm guessing PT-INR is playing a role there too.
You're absolutely right. It's becoming more common for people to manage their anticoagulant therapy at home, and that means more PT-INR testing outside of the traditional clinic setting.
Okay, so PT-INR is the big one, but what's the next most popular method?
That would be viscoelastic coagulation monitoring.
Viscoelastic. Okay, say that 3 times fast.
I know, right? It's a mouthful, but it's a really cool method.
How so?
Well, unlike PT-INR, which just gives you a single number for clotting time, viscoelastic methods actually let you see the whole clotting process unfold.
Oh, wow. So it's like a movie instead of a snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. It's much more dynamic, and it gives doctors a way more comprehensive view of what's happening with the blood clot, its strength, its stability, the whole 9 yards.
That sounds so much more informative.
It is, and that's why it's becoming increasingly important in critical care settings.
Like the ICU.
Exactly. Places where doctors need as much information as possible to make quick and accurate decisions.
So it's not just about how fast the blood clots, but how well it clots.
You got it. And that can be life-saving in situations like major surgery or trauma.
Wow, so viscoelastic monitoring is really on the rise then.
Oh, yeah. It's rapidly expanding.
Makes sense given how much more information it provides.
And the report also mentions other testing methods, too, just lumped together as others.
Others? What kinds of tests are we talking about there?
So that category includes things like activated clotting time, or ACT, and activated partial thromboplastin time, or APTT.
Okay, I've definitely heard of those, but I don't really know what they're used for.
So ACT is often used to monitor people who are on high doses of heparin, which is another type of blood thinner. Okay.
It's frequently used during heart surgery or dialysis when clotting needs to be carefully controlled.
Ah, I see. High-stakes situations.
Exactly. And APTT is another test that measures clotting time. It can also be used to monitor heparin therapy, but it's also used to screen for certain bleeding disorders.
So both ACT and APTT have their own specific uses.
Exactly. They're important parts of the overall coagulation testing landscape, even though the report doesn't go into detail about their market share or growth rates.
All right, that makes sense. So we've covered the different products, the consumables, the instruments, and the different testing methods. Now let's talk about who's actually using all of this stuff. Where are these tests being done the most?
So when we look at the end users, the biggest segment right now is hospitals.
Hospitals, okay, that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, hospitals are where you go when you're really sick and need the most advanced care.
Exactly. And they're also where a lot of surgery happens, and surgery often involves managing blood clotting.
Right, so it makes sense that hospitals would be the biggest users of these tests? And the report points out that the rising number of people with cardiovascular disease and the increasing number of surgeries that require anticoagulation therapy are big reasons why demand in hospitals is so high.
Okay, so hospitals are using the lion's share of these tests.
hmm
But are they also the fastest growing segment in terms of new users?
Actually, no, the fastest growing segment is diagnostic laboratories.
Really?
Yep, and this reflects a couple of things.
Like what?
First, there's this increasing demand for fast and accurate coagulation testing for all sorts of blood clotting disorders.
Okay, like so.
And this demand is coming from both inpatients and outpatients, so it's not just people who are already in the hospital.
So it's people being diagnosed and managed in a variety of settings.
Exactly. And to keep up with this demand, more and more labs are turning to point-of-care testing technologies.
Ah, so they can get those results faster and improve patient care.
Precisely. It's all about speed and efficiency.
And the report also mentions clinics and other healthcare settings as end users, but doesn't really go into detail about them.
That's right. They're definitely part of the picture, but we don't have specific numbers on their market share or growth rates.
Okay, fair enough. So we've got a pretty good picture of how this market is segmented by product method and end user.
A good overview.
But now let's get to the juicy stuff.
What's that?
The why behind all these numbers. What are the big forces that are driving the growth of this market?
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Exactly. So what's pushing this market forward?
Well, the report highlights several key factors. First off, there's the simple fact that the number of people with bleeding disorders is on the rise globally.
Okay, that makes sense. More people with bleeding disorders equals more need for testing.
Exactly. We're talking about conditions like hemophilia and deep vein thrombosis.
And as these conditions become more common, the need for effective and convenient ways to monitor and manage them grows right along with it.
Precisely, and point-of-care testing offers a really valuable solution in this regard.
So it's about meeting a growing need.
Absolutely. But that's not the only driver.
What else is contributing?
Well, governments around the world are increasingly stepping up to the plate with initiatives aimed at tackling blood-related diseases.
Oh, that's great to hear. So it's not just companies driving this, it's governments too.
Exactly. They're recognizing the importance of this, and these initiatives can take many forms.
Like what?
Increased funding for research public awareness campaigns, the implementation of better diagnostic and treatment guidelines.
So creating more supportive environment for both patients and the companies developing these technologies.
Precisely, it's a multi-pronged approach.
And I'm guessing the rising incidence of cardiovascular diseases worldwide is playing a role too, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge factor. Many cardiovascular diseases require careful management of blood clotting, often through anticoagulant therapies.
And those therapies often require regular monitoring through tests like PTINR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as the number of people with cardiovascular disease goes up, so does the demand for coagulation testing.
It's all connected.
It really is. So we have this growing need driven by patient populations, supported by broader healthcare trends, and bolstered by government efforts.
A trifecta of growth drivers.
You could say that, but of course no market is without its challenges.
Right, there are always hurdles to overcome.
Exactly. And the report identifies a couple of key restraints that could potentially slow things down.
Okay, let's talk about those. What are the main things holding this market back?
One significant factor is the cost.
The cost of the tests themselves.
Well, more the cost of the point-of-care coagulation testing devices.
Ah, so the upfront investment for those devices can be a barrier.
Exactly. While the benefits of rapid on-site testing are clear, the initial cost can be prohibitive, particularly for healthcare systems with limited resources.
That's a common problem with new medical technologies, isn't it? They often come with a hefty price tag.
It's true, and it can create disparities in access.
Okay, so cost is one hurdle. What's the other major restraint?
The other big one is regulation. The regulatory framework surrounding medical devices and testing procedures can be really strict.
Makes sense. You want to make sure everything is safe and effective.
Of course. But navigating these regulations can be a real headache for companies.
How so?
Getting the necessary approvals and making sure they're complying with all the rules can be a long and complicated process.
So it can slow down the development and introduction of new products.
Exactly, which can then impact market growth.
Okay, so cost and regulations, those are the two big challenges.
The main hurdles.
But let's end on a positive note. What about the future? What are some of the trends that are likely to shape this market in the years to come?
Oh, there are some really exciting things happening. One of the biggest trends is the constant advancement of the technology.
Okay, what kinds of advancements are we talking about?
Well, we're seeing the development of even more portable and user-friendly devices.
So making them easier to use in more settings.
Exactly. And the accuracy and speed of these tests are also improving all the time.
So it's becoming more and more feasible to do these tests anywhere.
Right. And that ties in perfectly with the other major trend, which is the growing shift towards home healthcare.
So it's like these two trends are feeding off of each other.
Exactly. As healthcare moves out of the hospital and into people's homes, the demand for reliable and easy-to-use point-of-care diagnostics, like these coagulation tests, is going to skyrocket.
And the technology is evolving to meet that demand.
Precisely. It's a really exciting time to be watching this field.
It sounds like it's like we're on the cusp of a real revolution in home healthcare.
I think so.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, the regions, the segments, the drivers, the restraints, the trends.
The whole shebang.
But we can't forget about the people behind all of this who are the major players in this market.
So it's not just a few small companies. This is a really competitive market with both big global players and smaller, more specialized regional companies.
Okay, so it's a mixed bag.
Exactly. And the report highlights some of the key companies like F. Hoffman LaRoche, AG, Abbott Laboratories, Siemens Healthineers.
Okay, those are some huge names in healthcare.
They are. And then you have Medtronic Pilcult Haemonetics Corporation, Hemasonics LLC, Micropoint Bioscience Inc., Verfinsienko Inc., and Cunning-Click Philips NV.
So a mix of the giants and some newer, more specialized players.
Exactly. And these companies are constantly innovating.
In what ways?
Well, they're developing new testing methods, improving the accuracy and ease of use of their devices, and trying to expand their reach into new markets all over the world.
So it's a really dynamic and competitive landscape.
It is, and the report also mentions a specific partnership renewal that I thought was interesting.
Oh, really? Which one is that?
It was back in January 2021, F. Hoffman LaRoche renewed its partnership with Sysmex Corporation.
Okay, and what's the significance of that?
Well, it shows how important collaborations are in this field.
How so?
So this partnership is all about providing top-notch hematology solutions, which of course includes coagulation testing technologies, and their goal is to make these tests more effective and accessible worldwide.
So it's like a joint effort to push the field forward.
Exactly, and it shows how interconnected innovation is in this space.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
The global and regional outlook.
Yeah.
The market segmentation, the drivers and restraints, and even the key players.
We've really delved deep.
We have, but before we wrap up, I want to revisit those regional growth drivers.
Good idea. It's worth taking a closer look at the specifics.
Exactly. So can you give us some more context on what's driving growth in each region?
Absolutely. So in North America, it's not just the overall rise in cardiovascular diseases.
Right.
They've also got a growing elderly population who often require more frequent monitoring.
And older folks are more likely to have these conditions in the first place.
Exactly. And North America also has a very well-developed healthcare infrastructure, which makes it easier for them to adopt these advanced point-of-care devices.
So they're well positioned for continued growth.
They are. And Europe has some similar drivers with their aging population and the increasing number of people with coagulation disorders. But they also have a strong emphasis on finding cost-effective healthcare solutions. And point-of-care testing can really shine in settings like emergency rooms and critical care units where time is of the essence.
So it's a good fit for their healthcare priorities.
Exactly. And we can't forget about technological advancements, which are a big driver in countries like the UK and Germany.
Okay. And what about APAC? We talked about how they're the fastest growing region.
Mm-hmm.
What are the nuances there?
So while they're also seeing a rise in cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, one of the biggest drivers in APAC is the increasing demand for rapid diagnostics.
Meaning they need results quickly?
Exactly. And there's a growing awareness of the importance of proactive health monitoring, particularly in rural and remote areas where getting to a central lab can be a real challenge.
So point-of-care testing is a game changer in those settings.
Absolutely. It brings healthcare to people who might not otherwise have easy access to it.
And it sounds like governments in APAC are playing a role too.
They are. They're putting a lot of effort into improving healthcare accessibility and affordability.
And that's helping to drive the adoption of point-of-care testing.
Exactly.
It's amazing to see how this technology can help bridge those healthcare gaps.
It really is. It's a powerful tool.
Okay, what about South America? What's fueling their growth?
So in South America, there's a rising demand for fast and accurate diagnostics for conditions like hemophilia and vitamin K deficiency.
And why is that demand increasing?
Well, there's a growing awareness of the benefits of getting those results immediately.
So you can start treatment right away.
Exactly. And that can make a big difference in these conditions.
And are there other factors at play in South America?
Yeah, healthcare investments and infrastructure are expanding across the region.
So they're able to build up their healthcare systems and adopt these newer technologies.
Exactly. And that's creating more opportunities for growth in the point of care testing market. And we can't forget about the increasing prevalence of chronic diseases and an aging population, both of which contribute to the need for better diagnostic tools.
Okay, so they're facing similar challenges to other regions and responding with similar solutions.
Right, it's a global trend.
And last but not least, the Middle East and Africa. What are the growth engines in those regions?
In the Middle East, the rising prevalence of chronic conditions like cardiovascular diseases and diabetes is a major driver.
So again, it's about managing those chronic conditions and preventing complications.
Exactly. And they're also seeing advancements in technology and a growing focus on improving the quality of patient care.
And those are both good things for the point-of-care testing market.
They are now in Africa. Some of the key drivers include the increasing number of people with conditions like hemophilia and vitamin K deficiency, and there's also a need for real-time monitoring during surgery.
So making sure things are going smoothly in those critical moments.
Precisely, and the technology is evolving to meet these needs too. We're seeing advancements in more robust and portable testing devices that can handle a variety of environments.
So they're adapting the technology to the specific needs of the region.
Exactly, and efforts to improve healthcare infrastructure and the demand for cost-effective solutions, especially in more remote areas, are also pushing the adoption of point-of-care testing in Africa.
So we're seeing some similar themes across all these regions, but with unique regional variations.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how these global trends play out differently in different parts of the world.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say are the most important takeaways for our listener regarding the point-of-care coagulation testing market?
I think the key message is that this market is on the move, it has serious momentum, and we're expecting to see some really substantial growth in the coming years.
We're talking about a jump from almost $2 billion in 2025 to over $3.4 billion by 2033.
Exactly. Those are big numbers, and that growth is being fueled by the increasing number of people with conditions that require coagulation monitoring and by the incredible advancements we're seeing in testing technology.
And we can't forget about those regional variations. While North America is the dominant player right now, the Asia-Pacific region, particularly India, is experiencing the most rapid growth.
Exactly.
But it's not just about the overall growth numbers, it's also about the shifts happening within the market.
What do you mean?
We talked about how segments like instruments analyzers and viscoelastic coagulation monitoring are growing faster than others.
Right.
And end users like diagnostic laboratories are playing a crucial role in driving the adoption of these technologies.
Absolutely. And I think there are some real aha moments for listeners when they realize just how big this market is and where it's headed.
It's easy to overlook these trends when you're not immersed in the world of healthcare, but they have the potential to change the way we manage our health in the years to come.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's worth leaving our listeners with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So we're seeing this incredible rise in home healthcare, and the technology behind point-of-care diagnostics for coagulation is becoming incredibly sophisticated. So it makes you wonder what other medical tests might become commonplace outside of traditional clinical settings in the years to come.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what if we could do all sorts of tests at home?
Exactly. And what would that mean for people's ability to take control of their own health? What would it mean for the future of healthcare delivery? These are big questions, but they're worth thinking about as we see more and more of these technologies move directly into the hands of patients.
It's a really exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
It is.
So much potential for positive change.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into the world of point-of-care coagulation testing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, be sure to tune in next time for another fascinating exploration of the ever-evolving world of healthcare.
Until next time.